My grandmother had one rule about her cast iron skillet, and that one rule is the reason she never bought another pan for 52 years. One rule, one pan, 52 years. Her name was Betty, and she paid $1.25 for that skillet at a hardware store in 1937, back when $1.25 was most of a day's wages. That same skillet sat on my stove this morning while I fried 2 eggs, and those eggs slid off the iron like it was coated in glass. Nothing is coated in glass. Nothing has ever been coated in anything at all. The average kitchen in this country burns through a non-stick pan every 2 to 5 years, and a decent one runs anywhere from $30 to $60. Run that across a lifetime of cooking, and you are looking at hundreds of dollars spent replacing something my grandmother bought exactly once. I'm going to show you the 30 seconds after supper that decide whether your pan lives another 80 years or dies in the back of a drawer. I'll tell you what Betty did with a rusted, orange, forgotten skillet she carried home from a farm sale for 40 cents, and why that ugly thing became the pan she reached for first. And I'll be straight with you about the 3 kitchens where this rule gets harder to follow, and exactly what to do instead, because I would rather you trust me than be impressed by me. Here's the part that might sting. The reason nobody taught you this is not that it stopped working. It's that a pan lasting 100 years is a terrible business. Subscribe if you still believe a thing ought to outlive the person who bought it. Here is the cast iron skillet rule my grandmother followed that saved her hundreds. Before I hand you the rule, you need to understand why the pan sitting in your cabinet right now is already dying. That nonstick pan is not built to last. It is built to be replaced, and there is a difference. The slick gray surface on it is a thin sacrificial coating sprayed onto soft aluminum, and every single thing you do in a kitchen takes a little of it off. The metal spatula takes some, the high heat under an empty pan takes some, the dishwasher takes a lot. That is not a defect, and it is not bad luck. That is the design. Read the warranty language on the box sometime. It covers the handle, it covers the rivets, and it quietly says nothing at all about the coating, which is the only part of the pan you actually paid for. What you are buying is a replacement schedule wearing the costume of cookware. Cast iron does the opposite thing, and this is the part that took me years to really understand. The dark surface on a well-used skillet is not a coating that came from a factory. It is not paint, and it is not enamel. You build it yourself, out of nothing but fat and heat. When you wipe a thin film of oil onto hot iron, the heat forces those fat molecules to link arms and harden into a smooth, tough, almost plastic layer that bonds directly to the metal. Cooks call it seasoning. Every meal you make lays down another microscopic layer of it, which means the pan is not wearing out while you use it. The pan is being built while you use it. Every other pan in your kitchen is losing value the moment you unwrap it. Cast iron is the only thing in that whole cabinet that gains value while it sits there. Betty understood this in her bones, and she said it plain. A new pan is a stranger. An old pan is a friend who owes you nothing. So here is the rule. It is 6 words long, and my grandmother said it the same way every time. The pan never goes to bed wet. That's it. That is the entire rule, and it has kept a 100-year-old piece of iron in working order through the Depression, through a war, through 5 children, and through a great many suppers I was too young to remember. Water is the only real enemy cast iron has. Not heat, not time, not hard use. Water. Water sitting in the bottom of a skillet overnight in a cold sink is what turns a family heirloom into an orange brick. Now let me walk you through exactly how she did it, because the timing is the whole thing. The moment supper came off the heat, That pan went back onto the burner while it was still hot. Not later, not after the dishes. Right then. She scraped it out with a wooden spoon, and anything stuck got a splash of hot water and about 10 seconds of a stiff brush while the steam was still rising off it. Hot iron releases food almost on its own. Cold iron holds onto it like a grudge. Then she set it back over a medium flame and stood there until every drop of water had steamed away and the surface went flat and dull instead of shiny. The pan tells you when it's dry. You just have to look at it. Then a half teaspoon of oil on a folded paper towel, and she wiped the whole thing down, inside, outside, up the handle, across the bottom. And here's the part people get wrong. She wiped most of it right back off again. You want the pan to look almost dry with barely a shine to it. A pan put away greasy turns sticky and gummy. And a sticky pan is what makes people give up on cast iron entirely. Off the heat, onto the hook, done. 30 seconds, maybe 40. Let me clear up the arguments because there are a few, and they keep good pans out of good kitchens. Soap. You have heard your whole life that soap destroys a skillet. That was true when soap meant lye soap, strong enough to strip paint off a porch rail. Modern dish soap is a detergent, and a hardened polymerized seasoning layer shrugs it off. A drop of soap will not undo years of cooking. Water standing in the pan will acidic food. A quick splash of wine or lemon to loosen the brown bits is fine. A pot of tomato sauce simmering for 3 hours in a young skillet will eat through the seasoning, so use a different pot for that until your pan has a few years on it. Storage. Never put the lid on tight because trapped moisture is just a wet pan with extra steps. If you stack pans, slide a paper towel between them, and if you find a small rust spot one morning, that is not a funeral. Scrub it with steel wool, dry it over the flame, oil it, and go on with your life. Iron forgives almost everything except neglect. A woman down the road from me had a skillet she'd inherited and given up on because everything she cooked in it stuck and tore. She kept it under the sink for 2 years. I asked her one question. Where does the pan go after supper? Straight into the dish rack, she said, wet with the rest of the dishes, sometimes overnight. That was the whole problem, and it took her 4 days to fix it. She scrubbed it, ran the rule after every meal for a week, and called me on a Thursday to tell me she'd just made an omelet that slid out of the pan in one piece. The pan was never broken. Nobody had ever told her the last 30 seconds mattered more than the first 30 minutes. And that's the kind of thing my grandmother knew that nobody ever bothered to write down. If you want the rest of them, I've gathered every trick, every recipe, every method into one place. Save $4,000 a year with Betty Secret's complete home-saving method. Just scan the code on your screen right now, or tap the link down in the description and pinned right at the top of the comments. It's the same knowledge that kept families fed and warm when every penny counted, all in one spot. Go take a look. It's waiting for you. Now, the rule keeps the pan alive, but the savings, the real money, comes from what one living pan lets you stop buying. Open your cabinets and count your cookware. Most American kitchens hold somewhere between 12 and 20 pieces, and the honest truth is that 4 of them do almost all the work. Betty had 3, a 10-inch skillet, a lidded pot for beans and stock, and a coffee pot. That was the kitchen, because a cast iron skillet is not a frying pan. It is a frying pan, a roasting pan, a baking dish, a cake pan, a cornbread pan, a cookie sheet, a deep fryer, a griddle, and a pizza pan. And it will do every one of those jobs without complaining. Cornbread went into it, peach cobbler went into it, a whole chicken went into it and straight into the oven. Biscuits baked on the flat of it. She'd brown a roast on the stovetop, slide the entire pan into the oven, and carry it to the table as the serving dish, and that is one pan washed instead of three. That is what a cookware set is actually competing with. $300 for 12 matching pieces, and a year later, you are using 4 of them and storing the other 8. The set is not sold to you because you need 12 pans. It is sold because 12 pans is a bigger number on a receipt than one. My grandmother cooked for 7 people every night of her life out of a skillet, a pot, and an oven. And nobody at that table ever went hungry or ever noticed anything was missing. The cabinet full of specialty equipment is not a sign of a serious cook. It is a sign of a serious marketing department. Now let me tell you about that 40-cent skillet because this is where the real bargain lives. Betty bought it at a farm sale sometime in the 60s, sitting in a crate of tools, orange from handle to rim and written off by everybody who walked past it. She paid 40 cents because nobody else wanted it. And here is what almost nobody knows about old pans. Skillets made before about 1960 were machined smooth on the cooking surface. The foundries put them on a lathe and polished the inside like a mirror. Somewhere in the 1960s, that step got cut to save money, and the pan you buy new today comes straight out of the sand mold with a rough, pebbled surface. That old orange thing was smoother, thinner, and lighter than anything on a store shelf right now. She scrubbed the rust off with steel wool, dried it over the burner, wiped it with lard, and set it upside down in a slow oven for an hour. 2 rounds of that and it was black as a stovepipe. That pan cost her 40 cents, and it outperformed everything in the store. You can still do this. Estate sales, church rummage sales, the back table at a flea market, the shed at your father's house. Rusty cast iron sits there at $5, $10, $15 because it looks ruined, and a premium new skillet runs well over $100. Nothing about rust is permanent. Iron is iron all the way through. There is no coating to fail and nothing inside it to break, which is exactly why the cookware industry would rather you never learned the word seasoning at all. And that's the kind of thing my grandmother knew that nobody ever bothered to write down. If you want the rest of them, I've gathered every trick, every recipe, every method into one place. Save $4,000 a year with Betty Sechrist's complete home-saving method. Just scan the code on your screen right now or tap the link down in the description and pinned right at the top of the comments. It's the same knowledge that kept families fed and warm when every penny counted, all in one spot. Go take a look. It's waiting for you. Look at any farmhouse kitchen from before the war and you'll see the same thing. 1 or 2 heavy pans hung on the wall where a person could reach them, black as coal and smooth as a river stone. Those pans were not decoration and they were not sentiment. They were equipment, and they were treated the way a man treats a good axe. A skillet showed up in wills. It went to the oldest daughter alongside the quilts and the good dishes. And the reason that sounds strange to us now is that we have forgotten what it means to own something that does not need replacing. There's an old story about a new bride being handed a black skillet at her wedding, and it was not a gift the way we mean gifts. It was equipment for a life. That pan was expected to still be working when she handed it to somebody else 50 years down the road, and more often than not, it was. Then the early 1960s came along and nonstick pans arrived in American stores, and the whole conversation changed overnight. Light instead of heavy, slick with no work at all. Throw it out when it scratches and buy the next one. It was genuinely easier, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But easier came with a bill attached, and that bill arrives every 2 or 3 years for the rest of your life. Within 1 generation, the knowledge just evaporated. It was never disproven. It never stopped working. It simply stopped being profitable for anybody except you. Now, here's the honest part, and it matters because I told you at the start, I'd give you the straight version. If your stove has a smooth glass top, cast iron takes more care. The pan is heavy and the surface scratches, so you have to lift it and set it down instead of sliding it, and I would use an 8-inch rather than a 12. If you have arthritis or any weakness in your wrists, a full-size loaded skillet can run 6 or 8 pounds, and that is a real consideration and not a small one. Go down a size or look at carbon steel, which behaves almost identically and weighs noticeably less. And if you cook a lot of long, acidic wine and tomato braises, keep a separate pot for those. Cast iron is not the answer to every question in a kitchen, and anybody who tells you it is has never actually cooked in one. One more thing worth saying plainly. Cooking in bare iron does add a small amount of iron to your food, which is a benefit for most people and not for everybody. If you have any iron storage condition, or you've been told to watch your iron levels, ask your doctor before you switch your whole kitchen over. I'm somebody who's good with $1. I am not a physician, and your health comes ahead of your grocery budget every single time. And I want to be clear about something else because I don't want anybody hearing this wrong. This is not about doing things the hard way on principle. I am not asking you to suffer for the sake of nostalgia. If you love your nonstick pan for eggs on a Tuesday morning, keep it and use it. The point is that you shouldn't have to buy a new one every 2 years for the rest of your life just because that's the arrangement somebody else built for you. So here's what I want you to do this week, and none of it takes an afternoon. First, go find the cast iron you already own. It's in the garage, the basement, the back of the bottom cabinet, or at your mother's house. And most families in this country have one whether they know it or not. Second, if it's rusty, take steel wool to it for 10 minutes, dry it over a burner, wipe it with any cooking oil, and set it upside down in a 400-degree oven for an hour with a sheet of foil underneath. Third, cook something fatty in it, bacon, sausage, fried potatoes. Fat is how you build the surface, and the first few meals do most of that work. Fourth, tonight after supper, run the rule. Hot pan, scrape it, dry it over the flame until it goes dull. Thin wipe of oil, hang it up. Time yourself. It's under a minute. Fifth, do that every single time for 2 weeks without skipping once, and then fry an egg in it and see what happens. Sixth, this weekend, look at the pans you'd be replacing anyway and ask yourself which of those jobs a skillet already does. Here's what a lifetime around that pan taught me. The cookware industry does not sell pans. It sells the belief that the last one wearing out was somehow your fault. It wasn't. It was the plan. Betty stood at her sink with that skillet in her hand and told me the same line more times than I can count. "You don't own a pan, child," she'd say. "You keep one, and it keeps you right back." That skillet is still black, still smooth, still hanging on my wall, and it has fed 4 generations of one family on $1.25. And that's the kind of thing my grandmother knew that nobody ever bothered to write down. If you want the rest of them, I've gathered every trick, every recipe, every method into one place. Save $4,000 a year with Betty Sechrist's complete home-saving method. Just scan the code on your screen right now, or tap the link down in the description and pinned right at the top of the comments. It's the same knowledge that kept families fed and warm when every penny counted all in one spot. Go take a look. It's waiting for you. Start with the one pan you already have. Not a new skillet, not a set, not an order placed tonight. Go find the one that's already in your house and run the rule on it after supper one time and see how it looks in the morning. Everything my grandmother did was built that way, one habit at a time. in the ordinary minutes after a meal when nobody's watching and nothing feels important. That's where the money actually lives, not in the big decisions. In the last 30 seconds, if this was worth your time, hit that like button. Subscribe, because next time I'll show you the one kitchen drawer she kept that replaced every gadget on the counter, and it cost less than a single takeout order. And drop me a comment telling me two things: what pan is on your stove tonight, and how old is it? If there's a skillet in your family with a story attached to it, I want to hear that one too, because that is exactly how this works. We pass down what we know, and every method that gets passed along is one more thing nobody can charge us for. Betty knew. Now you know too.